This podcast of The Pat Campbell Show is powered by the law offices of John M. Dunn.
The big story actually broke late yesterday afternoon. Congressman Jim Bridenstine from District 1 here in the great state of Oklahoma, also a member of the Freedom Caucus, appears to have broke rank. He is going to be voting yes on the American Health Care Act, and he is with me now to explain why he's voting that way and not voting for a full repeal. So with that said, Jim, welcome back to the program.
Well, thank you, Pat. It's good to be here.
All right, a couple things. I'm watching social media, and I read some of these in the 5 o'clock hour this morning. A lot of your ardent supporters are very disappointed with you. In fact, they've saved screenshots from your website in the past. You campaigned on a full repeal. This is not a full repeal. They feel that you have abandoned them. You've sold them out. What do you say?
Well, so if you could get a full repeal, I'd be for it. Don't get me wrong. That'd be much better than the current situation that we're in.
But it's not on the menu today. You don't have a full repeal option, do you?
We don't, and the reason is because of the Senate filibuster and the 1974 Budget Act that helps us get around the Senate filibuster with the reconciliation bill, which is what this is. This is a reconciliation bill. So you can't you can't do policy changes. And I'm not saying any of this is right, and I am not defending it. I want to be really clear.
Gotcha. This
process is terrible, and it needs to be changed.
Right.
But because it is where it is, we're handcuffed,
mm-hmm.
and it doesn't make me happy at all. So I want to be clear for everybody who's listening. I am not defending at all how we put together the rules and the 74 Budget Act to put us in this position.
Okay.
That being said, we've got to get at as much of Obamacare as we can and have enough votes to pass it in the House and pass it in the Senate. And as far as the House goes, it looks like we're close to having the votes. But I'll tell you this: I'm going to be brutally honest because there's nothing else I can do at this point.
Right.
This is probably the most consequential vote I have taken in my 4 years and 3 months since being in the House of Representatives.
Why?
You could argue that there was more wrath when I voted against John Boehner. That's true. This is far more consequential, and I want everybody to know I have not taken this lightly at all. I will also tell you we have had calls telling me, and so that I put the calls into 3 different buckets. The first bucket are liberal Democrats who, no matter what this bill is, they're against it, right? So, that's just a non-starter. Obamacare is falling apart. Premiums are skyrocketing. Deductibles are high. People have lost their health care. They've lost their doctor. And states are down, Oklahoma down to one insurance provider, 70% increases in premiums. This thing is unsustainable, and everybody knows it.
Right.
Some people don't have to admit it, but it's fundamentally true. This thing is collapsing. That's happening. And so the question is, what do we do now?
Mm-hmm.
So the people that want to just, we need more Obamacare, that's a non-starter. So
right.
I just take those people off the table because it's not reasonable.
Right.
Then there are the people who say, you need to be a no to hold out for more. And believe me, if I thought I could do that, I would be there. And I hope everybody in your audience knows, based on my history, based on what I've done in the past, killing bills on the floor of the House, that is not outside my realm of possibility. And I would be happy to do that if I thought it would make a difference.
Okay, let me jump in on that because I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding with you. People, I think some people, not all, some people, even your supporters, think that you are an obstructionist just for the sake of being an obstructionist. As somebody who's watched you, observed you, that's not you. Anytime you vote no for a reason. There's a method to your madness. You don't just do it because, well, the rest of the Freedom Caucus is voting no. I'm going to vote no. I'm an obstructionist. That's what I do.
That's right. And I will also tell you that the Freedom Caucus is not necessarily monolithic in this. You're going to see a number of us vote for this.
I've been telling people that all week, that there is cracks in the Freedom Caucus, and part of it is because there's actually some good stuff, which you're going to talk about in a little bit here, like defunding Planned Parenthood. This is the whole reason you were against the only one that voted against the omnibus from the Oklahoma delegation 2 Christmases ago was because of the Planned Parenthood thing. Now this is here. You can actually do something this time, and in some respects, it would be crazy. It would make you hypocritical if you didn't.
That's right. So, the whole Planned Parenthood thing was a major reason I voted against the omnibus, and here we have it in a bill to defund Planned Parenthood. If you look at the entire budget of Planned Parenthood, $1.2 billion annually. Well, we're gonna be able to cut federal funding for Planned Parenthood to the tune of $400 million. That's going to devastate Planned Parenthood.
Let me ask you a question about that, because a caller called in this morning. He says, you got to ask Jim about this. He's hearing that the Planned Parenthood defunding, it's a trick. It's a bait and switch, that it's only a 1 year of defunding. Is that true?
Well, it is a 1 year, but that's because this is a reconciliation bill. Okay. And so we're going to have to come back and do this. Anything in a reconciliation bill at all
is 1 year at a time.
Well, no, that's actually it's a 10-year bill. But the reality is, if you're going to defund Planned Parenthood, what we got to do is start here.
Okay. Well, let me back me up on this, because the funding for Planned Parenthood, the caller was right. It's for 1 year only. Do you have to revisit it through reconciliation every year during that 10-year process? How does that work?
The answer is yes.
Okay.
You'd have to revisit it next year, but it would not. It could be through the reconciliation process, or it could be by another leverage point.
Gotcha.
So there's other ways to do it.
Okay.
But your caller, and it will be absolutely true here. The caller is right. It is a 1 year defunding of Planned Parenthood.
Okay. Could it be a bait and switch? Are they tricking people like you, knowing that, look, Jim, we know where Jim is on Planned Parenthood. This gets him on board.
The challenge here is the Medicaid piece of Planned Parenthood is it's permanent, okay. Right? So this is what we call mandatory spending. It doesn't go away. So in order to get at it, we're going to have to get at it 1 year at a time, unless we could make it permanent. Well, if we make it permanent, so we're defunding it. If we made that permanent, then it would have to go through 60 votes in the Senate, because it wouldn't be able to finish in reconciliation.
Okay.
And it may be possible I'd have to talk to the parliamentarian over the Senate, which is not easy to do right now. But if you could extend it beyond 1 year, maybe that's possible. I honestly don't know.
I got to have you address this, too, before I go into the break here. The other thing, and I find this, I think it's because I know you, I find this to be the most offensive charge put at you on social media, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, wherever. There are people out there that are convinced that Trump, art of the deal, okay? That some sort of quid pro quo has been worked out with you. He calls you over, hey, Jimmy, you want the NASA job? You give me the yes vote. Address that.
Yeah, no, that's not true. There is no NASA job that I have been offered. It is true that I've interviewed for the job,
right,
but nothing has been offered to me.
But you also interviewed for the Secretary of the Air Force, right?
Right, and that
how'd that work out?
That job was offered to somebody else.
Right.
So the reality is there's if this is a deal for me, I'm bad at doing deals.
Well, here's why I find that offensive. Just about any other politician would if somebody told me they did a deal because there was something in it for them, I'd believe it. The Jim Bridenstine that I've grown to know, that I've had on the program over the last 4+ years, you're not that kind of guy. If you were going to make any sort of deal, it wouldn't be to benefit you; it would be to benefit your constituents.
That would be true. But I would not even benefit my constituents if I thought it was going to be bad for the country at large.
Okay. So you struggled with this. You've prayed over this. Give me the downside. What's the ugly side of this, and then tell me what's good in it.
So this is why this has been such a difficult and consequential decision. I mean, there are, and I've talked to you on this show about it. When you think about the Obamacare subsidy, and then you transfer, instead of getting subsidies on the exchanges, now we're going to have refundable tax credits. Well, a refundable tax credit is cash for you to purchase your health insurance. The money goes straight from the federal treasury to the health insurance company. That's a direct payment to an insurance company for the benefit of somebody. It's a subsidy. It's a subsidy to help you buy your health insurance. The challenge here has been that we shouldn't be doing that. What the Republicans have done is they've said, we don't want to means test it. We want it to be equal for everybody. And I agree with that assessment, because what you don't want to do is create disincentives for people to work.
Right.
But this is not a good solution, and on its face, I would not support it. Mm-hmm. I would also tell you that if you look, and this is the hard part, if you look at Obamacare and you look at this bill, you cannot argue that this bill is worse than Obamacare. It cuts $1 trillion in taxes, and at the same time saves about $300 billion to the deficit over 10 years. Mm-hmm. So $1 trillion tax cut, and it still saves $300 billion. So if your goal is to move us to a day where we have a sustainable fiscal policy, which ultimately results in a more sustainable monetary policy, this bill would be a yes. So you take that, and then you combine it with some of the things in the bill that you don't like, and you say, let's get rid of these things that we don't like. But every time you start doing that, that means you're losing. It's like squeezing a balloon. You squeeze on this side, and it goes out the other way. What I'm saying is, once we start doing that, you start losing other Republicans. And we're at a point now where if I thought we could kill this bill and then come back with a more conservative bill and pass it, I would be voting no, because I'm all for killing a bill to get a better bill. In my best judgment, we are not there. In my best judgment, if we go that direction, what could come back is worse, and we would not be defunding Planned Parenthood. And there's a whole lot of things that I won't compromise on, and everybody knows that. But when it comes to defunding Planned Parenthood, I can compromise a lot to be able to defund Planned Parenthood. Mm-hmm. So I don't think if we kill this bill and it comes back, I don't think it's, and I'm being honest, Pat, I could be wrong. Okay. I know that's crazy for a politician to say. I could be wrong. Mm-hmm. But I think that if we don't get this done, it's more damaging than it is good. And I'm using the best judgment I have on this.
Let me bingo. That's I don't always agree with everything you do, but here's where you are different than just about every politician I've dealt with. I trust your judgment. A lot of times you have access to information I don't have access to, my listeners don't have access to, and part of the reason we send you to Washington, D.C., first of all, is not necessarily to just be a clone of us, but because of your judgment. I trust you to make the right call when sometimes, we don't have all the facts in front of us. I had Mark Wayne Mullen on the program earlier this week. By the way, one of the best interviews I've ever done with him. But, all of my listeners, a good chunk of my listeners, myself included, are there like, why can't you do a full repeal? You did it 40 times when Obama was president, but then you knew it was going to get sent back. So why can't you do a full repeal? And he started to explain how Obama put this whole thing together so that it couldn't be easily disassembled. And one of the things, it brought up an example, the Indian Hospital in Claremont, okay? If you do a full repeal, places like that, and he rattled off a litany of other places, nursing homes, things like that, they're not gonna have any money. There's not gonna have any money. They're gonna have to. Their staff's not gonna be paid. They're not gonna be able to take care of patients, and that is not in the best interest of his constituents or your constituents. So to do a full repeal, yeah, you could do it, but you'd be cutting off your own nose to spite your face. And right. It's something that can't be done right now. People, that's part of the reason he did that phone town hall meeting last night, was to explain the complexity of this. Barack Obama was not stupid. He's brilliant in that they put this together. Pelosi put this together in a way that it could not be easily disassembled, and that's why they've been working so long to try to get this thing apart so that places like that don't fall through the cracks.
Right. I will tell you one thing that I became convinced of. I was over at the White House just a few days ago, and the president and the vice president and others were there. Mick Mulvaney, who used to be a part of the Freedom Caucus with us here in the House, and of course we had a bit of a banter. And in the end, the vice president was talking. There was three of us members of Congress there, pulled us in. And he said, look, we're not getting everything we want in this first bucket, meaning this reconciliation bill. And everybody knows especially your audience, there's going to be two additional buckets. One is to get the regulations, and Tom Price is going to work on that as Secretary of Health and Human Services. And then there's going to be another bucket where there's going to be selling across state lines and other things, maybe tort reform to have costs come down even further. And I want all that in the first bucket. Let's do that first, right? The vice president pulled us in, and he was like, look, here's the deal. I've been in politics a long time. And if you don't believe that this president is 100% committed to getting bucket 2 and because we've been around, this is actually what the vice president said. He said I've been in your position, because he was one of the there wasn't a Freedom Caucus back then, but he was one of us back then. And the Freedom Caucus has a lot of trust in Mike Pence. And he pulls us aside and he said, look, you guys all live in Stockholm Syndrome. And he goes, I know what it's like, because you believe people are telling you things that if you vote on this today, tomorrow we're going to do something more. Right. And we're living in this world where we don't believe that anymore. This is what the vice president was saying. And he nailed it so correctly. We're living in a world where we don't believe what people tell us anymore, because we've been there in the House of Representatives and people have told us things that ultimately never come true.
Got a number of callers on here. I want to get as many in as possible. Please focus. Make your point. Ask your question. I'll let them respond. We'll move on to the next caller. So let's start with Jim. You with me?
Yeah, I'm here.
I got you locked in. Let's go to Rebecca. Rebecca, call, comment, question for Congressman Bridenstine.
Yes, I do. Hospital charges for Band-Aids, Kleenex, pharmaceutical companies charging over $100 for B12, which is a very...
What's the question? Let's get to the question.
The question is, does the bill have anything? Does it refer to any of that in the new bill?
Thank you, Rebecca. Jim?
So the next step in the president... this goes back... This is a great question. It goes back to what I was saying before the break. The vice president took us in and he said, if you believe that this is the last vote, you're wrong. You know, we're used to this idea where we're promised things to come in the future and then they never happen. Right. So we vote no. And what we got from the vice president was, this president is very different. All those things you need to throw out the window, because the president is committed. And if you've not been believing what the president says, based on what he's been doing from his campaign, then you're incorrect. He is committed. Now, prescription drugs and the cost of drugs and those kind of things, those are going to be coming down the line. That is going to happen.
Isn't Tom Price going to be handling a lot of that?
You can do a lot of it through the regulatory process. We need to make that permanent. Don't get me wrong. If Tom Price can undo it, then the next president can redo it. That's going to require the passage of a law as well. But I'm telling you, the president is committed to getting this stuff done, and the vice president is saying that, you know, if you think this is the last crack we're going to get, you're wrong.
I want to get more in here. By the way, when I had Mark Wayne Mullen on, he said that anybody who's a yes vote gets to add an amendment. Is that true, and what did you add? What did you put in here?
Well, there's been a whole host of amendments that have been going on making this thing better. One of the big ones...
Did you put one in? What's yours?
Well, the whole Freedom Caucus, we've been negotiating, on a whole host of things. But one of the major things was the idea that everybody gets the refundable tax credit, and now it's not everybody. There's a cap on that.
Yeah, we talked about that before. All right, let's get some more calls. Darren, question, comment quickly, please, for the congressman.
Yes, sir. When do you actually see a time frame for deductibles and premiums coming down?
Thank you.
I think it will happen right away. And here's the thing. When you look at the Congressional Budget Office score, what it indicates is that premiums are going to go up for another 2 years. That's what it says. Mm-hmm. But it can only score what's in this bill. It can't score, ultimately, the regulations that the Health and Human Services Secretary, the regulations he is going to unwind. Mm-hmm. And it can't score, other things that we're passing other bills right now. Yesterday, we passed McCarran-Ferguson, which prevents collusion between insurance companies and things like this, so it creates more competition. So there's a whole host of things that we're also doing. What I'm saying is, if you look at it collectively, it is my assessment that insurance premiums will start coming down. All
right, one more quickie here, and then I'm going to let you go. Carl, you're on with Jim Bridenstine. Question, comment, quickly, please.
Yes, thank you, Pat, and thank you, Congressman, for being here available for our questions and comments. I have a comment, and basically, I'm not surprised. The more I think about it, I was surprised yesterday when you went yes. Yes, I disagree with you. on the fault, but I don't think that you're doing this because of a quid pro quo. Okay, first of all,
quickly,
I didn't believe that for a sec, and just 15 more seconds. I don't think that that people should be surprised because the situation. Go back to Trump's election and how you came out. I think people should think about that as far as your wisdom, according to this bill. Thank you.
Carl, thank you for the call. Appreciate it, Jim. Quick follow-up.
I would also say, Pat, there's a lot of calls that we're getting to this office that are Republicans that support this because they want the president's agenda to continue going forward, and those numbers are actually very large numbers of phone calls.
Amen. Jim, thanks for stopping by. Appreciate it.
Okay,
log on to 1170kfaq.com to check out all of Pat Campbell's podcasts, powered by the law offices of John M. Dunn.